Hi there, Sian here at Counting What Counts. Thank you very much for joining us today as I am talking through using the Culture Counts platform as a user of the Impact and Insight Toolkit. Okay, so we have just spoken about submitting data once it's been collected. Okay, so you need to submit your data to Arts Council, and we have just talked through that. In addition to submitting the data to Arts Council, you also need to prepare an insights report. Now, your insights report is a report which can be downloaded directly from the Impact Insight Toolkit on the Culture Counts platform for you to send to your relationship manager. You can also, of course, use it internally to inform board meetings or just to prompt discussion. So let's take a look at that now. Prepare insights report. Okay, so this is one of my example evaluations we are using today. It's called IB Dancing Jack Less Than Threes Jill. Now this is going to look slightly different to the insights reports that we have seen previously. However, there will also be some similarities. So the first thing you'll see are the evaluation properties. If you have not completed your evaluation properties, you will be prompted to do so, as you can see here. Okay, so I have completed most of them, but not that final one, the duration one. So if I were prompted to do this, I would simply click on Set up Evaluation Properties. Okay, now scrolling down from the properties, this is where I would type in my creative intentions. So this is where I can say what exactly it is that I was hoping to achieve through this work. As you can see, there are some suggestions here. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to type in the box, these are my intentions. Okay. You can also see here a breakdown of the different types of responses. So you've got 3 self-priors, 3 peer, and 12 from the members of the public. So now we're going to look at some radar charts. If you have used the Impact and Insight Toolkit previously and you have created insights reports previously, you will be familiar with a radar chart. However, I will explain what a radar chart is for those of you that are less familiar. So a radar chart is essentially a way of you quickly seeing to what extent people agree with a dimension. So remember that a dimension is a statement, as you can see here, meaning it moved and inspired me. Okay, and that is number 1. So you can also see number 1, 1, 1 along the tops. Now the center point is 0. You've got a point here along the line. This is 0.5, and you can see at the end up here, this edge point is 1. Remember that dimensions are scored on a 0 to 1 scale to 2 decimal places. Okay, so it's 0, 0.01, 0.02, etc., etc. And the blob here indicates where along that line the mean average sits for the responding group. Okay, so self-prior, put it there, peers put it there, and public put it there. So in actual fact, it looks as though people were pretty similar on this one. Self, peers, and public. You can see that the triangles actually aren't that far off between them all. You are able to add some notes here if this is what you're expecting to see, or maybe it's a little bit of a surprise. Now we have here the intention versus outcome. So what we have here is that the different dimensions are shown down the left-hand side: rigor, narrative, meaning, presentation, and risk. And again, you are able to see the averages for the different dimensions and the different respondent groups. You can really clearly see that the self-assessors thought rigour would be scoring at approximately 77. The peers actually scored it higher than that at 82, and members of the public scored it slightly lower at 71. And again, you can add some notes if you like. Margin of error. Now this only looks at the public responses. And what this means is if you were to survey all of the people that attended the work, okay, how representative, how accurate your average is, okay? So we can see that there were 17 responses to the meaning dimension, 18 to narrative, and 18 to rigour. And these are the averages that came out of them, okay? So 63 or 0.63, depending on how you want to look at it, 69 and 74. Now, these results have actually come in with a really high margin of error. Now, the reason that the margin of error will be this high will be because I had only managed to capture a very small proportion of attendees, okay, at the event. If I had managed to capture data from nearly everybody that attended, the margin of error would be drastically lower, okay, maybe at 2%. Ideally, you are looking for a margin of error below 5%, okay, in an ideal world. Margin of error at 17% is quite a big margin of error, and that is reflected in this confidence interval, okay? So what this is showing me is that if 100% of the audience had been surveyed, the true average would probably lie somewhere between 52 and 74 for meaning, okay? So yes, it could be 63, but it very easily might not be 63, okay? So that is what the margin of error means, and the smaller the margin of error, the smaller the interval, if you like, okay? Because it could actually be that meaning scored 53 as opposed to 63. It could actually be that narrative was at 75 instead of 69, and that rigour was actually at 70 as opposed to 74, okay? So this is an indication as to how reliable your mean average truly is. And I think in this instance, we'd probably say that it's not that reliable. And I'd probably want to make a note of that in the annotation. Not reliable mean averages, can't spell, due to small sample. Okay. When you have such a small sample like this, the important thing to consider is not that the data is no longer useful. It's just that you are looking at it with a different lens, if you like, okay? So the mean average is no longer going to be able to reflect the whole audience's perception, and is instead just going to be specific to those individuals. So you just sort of need to reframe your thinking around the mean averages. Okay, and so then we're going to carry on looking at the public. And we've got here the variation in public scores. We have a box and whisker plot. I always like box and whisker plots because I think it's interesting to see how spread out the results actually were. So as you can see with my results, actually they're all pretty spread out. But we would probably say that the narrative dimension has the closest. You can see here it's also got the smallest interquartile range, and that's this bit here, okay? So the smaller the bar, the smaller the box, the closer together your audiences were. The bigger the box, the bigger the line, the more spread out your audience was in all of their responses. And the reason this is interesting is that we can see whether your audience members or, the people that attended the work, members of the public, participants, whomever, we can see whether they were in agreement or not. Okay, so I think it'd be pretty safe to say with this graph that the respondents were not really in agreement with each other. And then that is reflected further when we look at this stacked level of agreement chart. Okay, so again, we can see that there's quite a variation here. The majority of responses seem to be in agree and strongly agree, but there's still quite a hefty proportion in disagree and strongly disagree. So that is reflected as well in this box and whisker plot. Okay, so you've got here response distribution, and this enables you to see where the majority of responses fall, okay? So these are the scores along the bottom here. And then dependent on how high the point is on the chart, shows you how many people would have responded at that point. So we can see, for instance, looking at narrative, there are two real peaks, if you like, here and here. Around was that approximately 64 and approximately 73, say? So there are two peaks here, and we've got one peak for rigor, okay, at hitting at around about 79, 80, okay? So this is enabling you to see where the responses are concentrated. And now if we scroll down as well, we are onto the demographics, okay? So we can look at the gender demographics, the age, and the location. And now this is something that you wouldn't have seen before in an insights report. In the new insights reports, as these are, your other questions are being pulled through. Okay, so you will have noticed so far that it has been pretty dimensions heavy. Okay, so it's all dimensions, and we've got some demographics in that. And that's the same as was in the original insights report. Now we are enabling you to also bring over your custom questions. So for instance, you can see here, please write 3 words to describe your emotional response. Okay, and you can see that the system has automatically generated a graph which is indicating the most commonly used word. Now this here would have been from a free text question, and you have the opportunity to include some of the responses if you like. Therefore, for instance, I might choose to use, say, the top 3. Okay, those are 3 I want to include. And as you can see, there are more questions that I asked in my surveys that are now being pulled through. So how many times in the past year? Where did you attend? And as per the original insights report, I am also able to write in any insights that I have from this. And again, we have some handy little prompts for you. Okay, now, of course, we understand that you might not want to have all of your custom questions included in your insights report. And that is absolutely fine, okay? So you've got the opportunity here to include them if you like, and by default, they will be added. However, it might be that actually you don't want to include all of the questions, and that's absolutely fine, okay? So as you can see here, over on the left-hand side, there's this little eye icon, okay? So let's say I want to not include the 3 words question. I would click on the eye. See, it's now crossed out. If I scroll down to where the 3 words question was, it was above this one and it's no longer there. Okay? So it's important for you to remember that you can remove them if you do not wish for them to be displayed. You can save each chart individually. as an SVG or as a PNG. Which would be handy if you are going to be doing a presentation, perhaps. You might want to use some of these. In particular, maybe the ones that compare the self with the peer in the public, perhaps. Of course, it all depends on what it is you are demonstrating via your presentation. But it would definitely be worth exploring this and remembering that you can download the graphs individually, okay? So you can pop them wherever you like. It's important for you to remember that this is your data, okay? So you can obviously save it, you can do with it as you wish, okay? Okay, so let's say that I'm happy with my insights report. All good. Let's zip on back up to the top, shall we? And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to save to PDF. And now once it has saved to a PDF, I am then able to very simply send it to my relationship manager. You can see here, it has all been pulled through into an easy to read PDF. Okay, and you can very easily save it and email it to your relationship manager, and then you will have completed the process on creating an evaluation, carrying out the evaluation, submitting the data to Arts Council, and sharing your report with your relationship manager. I hope that's been useful for you, and as per usual, please do feel free to get in touch if you have any questions at all. We'll be very happy to help you. Thank you.